I used to think silence was peaceful. Now, it hangs over this house like a weight I can't lift. After David died, everything slowed. The clock ticked louder. The creak of the floorboard under the front hall mirror suddenly startled me. I could hear my own breathing, and that terrified me more than anything. I hadn't cried much at the funeral. People assumed I was just being strong for Ethan. But the truth was I was numb. David was gone, and I hadn't even had a chance to be angry with him for leaving me. Not really. It didn't feel real. Nothing did. Ethan came home 2 days after the burial. I stood at the front door when his car pulled up, and for a moment, I didn't recognize him. He looked older. Not just in the way a 22-year-old man matures in college, but heavier, like something was pressing on him from the inside. "Hi, Mom," he said, hugging me quickly, almost stiffly. I smiled and told him how glad I was to have him home. He carried in his bags, looked around the house, and immediately commented on how quiet it was. "You've been okay?" he asked later that evening as we ate reheated casserole from the neighbors. "As okay as I can be," I replied. He nodded. Then he looked away and said something odd. "Have you talked to Jessica?" "Jessica Reynolds?" I raised an eyebrow. He didn't look at me. "Yeah, you know, from next door." "You shouldn't." "Why not?" He shook his head. "She's not who you think." I brushed it off as grief speaking. Ethan and Jessica had always had an awkward relationship. She was David's age, maybe a little younger. Widowed herself 3 years ago. Lived alone. We weren't exactly friends, but we shared enough wine and weekend garden talk to be familiar. Still, his comment stuck with me. Over the next few days, I noticed small things. Ethan had a habit of standing by the living room window at night, staring across to Jessica's darkened house. Once, I caught him doing it long after midnight. "She leaves her porch light on," he said when I asked. "It's annoying." But it wasn't the light he was watching. I could feel that. I tried to settle back into life. Bills, bank paperwork, life insurance claims. But I kept finding things that didn't make sense. In David's desk drawer, tucked beneath a stack of old receipts, I found a photograph I had never seen before. It was taken at some neighborhood event years ago, maybe a barbecue. David stood next to Jessica, smiling. His hand was around her back, not inappropriately, but familiar. Too familiar. What caught my eye wasn't them. It was Ethan. He was younger, maybe 15 or 16. He stood a few feet behind, staring directly at them. His face wasn't angry, it was blank, like he was analyzing them. I shoved the photo back into the drawer. Later that afternoon, Ethan found me in the kitchen. He asked if I needed anything from the store, then paused and looked me dead in the eyes. "Don't talk to Jessica," he said again. I laughed nervously. "You're being weird." "I mean it." His voice was low now. Firm. "She's not someone you want in your life. Trust me." I stared at him. "Ethan, is there something you're not telling me?" He didn't respond. He just walked away. That night, I went for a walk. The spring air had that cool bite to it, but I needed the clarity. As I passed Jessica's house, I saw her on the porch, watering her flowers. She looked up and gave me a small smile. I nodded, hesitated, then kept walking. But something in her eyes, it wasn't friendliness. It was caution, or maybe regret. When I returned home, Ethan was waiting. "Where were you?" he asked. "Out," I replied. "You saw her, didn't you?" I didn't answer. His eyes darkened. "She's not who you think, Mom." I stared at him. "And who is she, Ethan?" He didn't speak. That night, after he went to bed, I returned to David's desk. I opened the drawer again, pulled out the photo, and stared at it longer. My fingers trembled slightly. I flipped it over. A note was scrawled faintly on the back in David's handwriting. "Keep this hidden. She'll never understand." I sat there for a long time, not because I understood what was happening, but because I suddenly knew something about David's past, Jessica's silence, and Ethan's anger was connected, and I was the only one still in the dark. I couldn't sleep that night. The image of David, Jessica, and Ethan frozen in that photograph refused to leave my mind. His note on the back, "Keep this hidden. She'll never understand," kept echoing. What had David thought I couldn't understand? What secret had he taken with him to the grave? By morning, the ache in my chest had turned into something sharper. Curiosity, maybe. Or dread. Either way, I needed answers. And there was only one person who could give them to me. I waited until Ethan left to clear his head, and as soon as the door shut, I walked across the street to Jessica's house. She answered the door slowly, cautiously, like she'd been expecting me. "Claire," she said, barely above a whisper. "Do you have a minute?" She stepped aside. "Of course." Jessica's living room was tidy, filled with quiet blues and soft creams, peaceful but tense. We sat down across from each other like old friends pretending to catch up, even though the air between us felt charged. "I found a photo," I started. "David."
"You."
"Ethan." "A backyard gathering. Maybe 10 years ago." Her fingers tightened around the mug she held. I remember it. There was writing on the back. David said, "I never understand." Jessica inhaled slowly, looking down. He wasn't wrong. I leaned forward. "Help me understand." She didn't speak for a long time. When she finally did, her voice was calm. "Tired. David and we were involved. It was before I married Rick. Before you and David moved into the neighborhood. We had a history that never fully went away." I sat back. My stomach turned. I had wondered, but hearing it confirmed hit differently. "I ended it years ago," she continued. "But Ethan, he knew. Somehow, he always knew. He used to watch us. He'd show up unexpectedly when David and I were alone outside. I think he believed I was trying to take his father away." A silence settled in, deep and uncomfortable. "And were you?" I asked, my voice cracking. "No," she said firmly. "I knew David loved you. But Ethan, he never saw me as just the neighbor. He looked at me like I was the cause of something broken." I remembered how young Ethan had been back then. Maybe 14. Maybe younger. Old enough to notice too much, too young to understand it. Jessica leaned forward now. "Claire, listen to me carefully. After David and I stopped talking, Ethan started showing up here. He'd knock, ask questions, sometimes just sit on my porch. One night, he asked me if I ever loved his father more than Rick or you." My eyes widened. "What did you say?" I told him it didn't matter anymore. That everything was in the past.
She paused.
And then he said something that chilled me. I leaned in. He said, "Then maybe we can start fresh. Just us. No past to worry about." I stared at her. My skin prickled. I told him never to come back.
And he didn't.
Until now. A shiver ran down my spine. "You think he's here because of you?" "I know he is," she whispered. "He's watching. I see him outside my window sometimes. Just standing there. I don't think he's grieving like you think he is, Claire. I think he's reliving something." Back home, I tried to process everything Jessica had said. Her story aligned with Ethan's odd behavior. His late-night staring. His anger at me for speaking to her. His need to protect something or someone. I went to David's office again, desperate for clarity. This time, I dug deeper. Beneath a folder of old invoices, I found a bundle of letters. None addressed to me. My fingers shook as I read them. They were intimate, emotional. Some were from David to Jessica, some from her to him. But what stunned me most were the ones about Ethan.
"He knows, Jess.
He sees everything. I'm afraid of what he's becoming."
"He's not angry."
"That would be easier. He's quiet, calculating. If anything ever happens to me, promise me you'll stay away from him." I dropped the papers. I had been wrong. This wasn't just about a marriage or an affair. This was about my son. That night, I watched Ethan through the crack of my bedroom door as he walked past David's study. He paused, his fingers brushing the doorframe. Not going in, just hovering. A flicker of something crossed his face. Not grief, not confusion. Control. I no longer felt like a mother in mourning. I felt like a woman standing on the edge of something terrifying. And what lay below wasn't just the grief of losing David. It was the realization that the boy I had raised, the son I thought I knew, had been living with a secret far darker than I was prepared to face. I waited until Ethan left the house again. He said he was going for a walk, though I didn't believe him. And then I made the call. Jessica answered on the second ring. "Can you come over?"
I asked. "Now."
15 minutes later, she stood in my kitchen. Her hands trembled as she clutched the mug I offered, but her eyes were sharper than before. She wasn't surprised to be here. She'd been waiting for this conversation. "I found the letters," I said quietly. Jessica nodded. "And I believe you now. About Ethan." She took a deep breath. "Claire, I wish I had told you sooner." I shook my head. "You were trying to protect me, but now we need to protect each other." We sat in silence, listening to the ticking of the wall clock. The sound seemed louder, more urgent. "I don't think he's just obsessed with the past," I said. "I think he's trying to recreate it. Fix something that was never his to fix." Jessica looked down. "He's always wanted control. Over the narrative. Over the truth." The front door opened. We both froze. Ethan's footsteps were light. Too light. "Mom," he called. I stood, placing myself between Jessica and the hallway. "In the kitchen," I replied, voice steady. He appeared in the doorway, his expression unreadable. When he saw Jessica, his jaw tightened. "What is she doing here?" "She's here because we need to talk," I said. "All of us." He glanced at me, then back at Jessica. "You shouldn't have come." "She didn't come to hurt you," I said gently. "Neither of us did. But we need the truth, Ethan." "I need the truth." Ethan's lips parted, as if to protest, but he stopped. A strange calmness settled over him, like someone who had finally accepted something inevitable. "You want the truth?" he asked. "Fine." He walked to the table and sat down across from us, folding his hands neatly. I was 13 when I realized Dad loved her. His eyes met mine. Not just in passing. Not in memory. Actively. Quietly.
Constantly.
He'd watch her when we were at neighborhood events. He'd smile differently when she was around. "You don't know that," Jessica began. "I do," he said firmly. "Because I watched him. I watched both of you." He looked back at me, and I watched you pretend not to see it. My stomach turned. "I didn't know." "Maybe you didn't want to," he said coldly. He turned to Jessica. "I used to think you were the reason he never saw me. That if you hadn't existed, maybe I would have mattered to him. But then I realized you were the only one who ever looked at me like I wasn't invisible." Jessica flinched. "Ethan, I came back because I thought maybe now, after everything, maybe we could try again. A different way. No more secrets. No more David." My voice cracked. "What were you trying to do?" He looked at me with an eerie stillness. "Rewrite the story." "You were never in the story the way you thought," Jessica said. "You saw what you wanted to see. But there was never a future here. Not with me. Not like that." Ethan's face twitched. Then, without warning, he stood up. "Thank you for the truth," he said softly. "I guess I needed to hear it out loud." He walked toward the door. "Ethan," I called. He paused. "Don't worry, Mom. I'm not going to hurt anyone. I just thought, maybe if I could control one part of this life, I could make peace with the rest of it." Then he left.
Just like that.
Jessica and I sat in silence, neither of us knowing what came next. Later that night, I found a note on the kitchen counter. Ethan's handwriting, clear and even. "I won't come back. Not until I figure out who I am without him, without you, without her. Maybe it's time I stopped watching and started living. I'm sorry if I scared you. I just didn't know what else to do." I folded the note slowly. A strange relief settled over me, not because it was over, but because the truth had finally surfaced. I had lost my husband, nearly lost my son. But what scared me most was how little I had understood the people closest to me. And now, with the house quiet again, I finally understood. Some silence isn't peaceful. It's a warning.